So good day, everyone. So due to popular demand, she's not been on my channel for the last 2 years, and we've got Cam back here after our last lunar recent video.
Yeah.
And before we even start for this video, um, it's a pretty heavy topic because it does impact people, you know, for some their lifetime of what happened here. So as we try to decode the astrological portrait of the Diddler,
Yes.
um, we will try to have the utmost respect for the victims involved. But at times, because this is an astrological chat and we haven't been talking like this for the longest time, so if sometimes we get just a little bit giggly, it's because of the literalness of some of the astrological significators or imprints that happen in his chart that manifest very directly
Yeah.
uh, in his life and also around him. So, how have you been
This
for the
is
past 2 years?
this is all alleged, of course. I have been well, thank you very much.
Yes,
Very
all
well, thank
alleged for
you.
entertainment purposes only.
Yes, all of it. Um,
Yeah,
but yes, I think this is a heavy topic. It's delicate, and we will try to make it as respectful as possible, not only for the victims involved, but for anyone out there that is going through or has gone through similar situations.
mm,
We will be discussing themes of abuse of all kinds. If you catch my drill,
yeah,
um,
and
if that is a trigger for you,
yes, trigger warning. Yeah,
please skip the video. We won't mind. We promise. Please prioritize your mental health. So I think that's very important to say because the themes of this video can be a little bit heavy. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
yeah. And just as a reiteration, all our opinions are alleged. We are coming from the viewpoint from his birth chart, and we've got a proposed rising sign for his birth chart as well. After some reverse engineering by yours truly and her. And I think we're pretty confident of this rising sign. And we've also tried to fine tune the down to the degree or the probable degree of his rising sign. And everything just became crystal clear, or everything is just cleared, with
Yeah.
whatever he experienced in life and tying that back to his birth chart. So, without further ado, let's go to some background information. Take it away,
All
Cam.
right. Okay. Do you want me to share my slides?
Sure, that will be like a very good, like a background thing, what we're dealing with before
Yes.
we jump into the astrological correspondence of it all.
Yes. So can you see the screen?
Yes, I saw you. I'm seeing your solar fire now. Do you want to share your
Perfect.
slides? Yeah,
Yes. I'm
cool.
just gonna change right now. Here we
Perfect.
go. Now these slides weren't meant for public view. They were for me because I'm a very visual person, but we just thought we'd share them with you as it might be just a little bit, easier. Um, again, because I am very visual, so maybe it helps you as well. Oh, you're on mute. Don. There we
Yes, I will jump in when it's needed.
go. Okay. Okay, so the proposed ascendant, Virgo. So there is a few reasons why we believe this is. Now, part of my department was to look into the past, I guess, and just to come up and confirm this ascendant. So I did go through couple, not many, because of course we don't want a very long, like a too long of a video, but a key incidents in his life that were quite important and marked him. And we're talking about the death of his father, the ingress to Catholic school, and the alleged sexual abuse he suffered while in there. When he was fired from Upturn Records, and at the same time he launched Bad Boy Records, which was huge for him. and the relationship, of course, to Cassie and the unfolding of the present allegations, which we be discussing more when we come to the present and what's going on today.
And into the future as well.
Yes, into the future as well. Now, the death of the father, using a Virgo ascendant, Sean, I'm going to be calling him Sean.
Or Puff.
Or Puff, I don't know what to call him. So many names, but yes, Sean was 2 years old when his father passed. And so therefore he was in a third house perfected year. Now, if I look down, I do have my notes here, and that's why I look down. Okay. So activating the third house perfected year, I'm guessing a lot of you guys are familiar with perfections. And when this is activated, of course, it activates the 8th house and, of course, the 5th house, because the ruler is in the 5th house in that 29th degree, which is quite a difficult degree as it is. But the part that is really interesting is the fact that he has the part of the father in the 8th house conjuncting Chiron and in exact opposition to Uranus right here. And, the father was actually killed while sitting in his car. Now, Sean wasn't present when this happened, but the dad, I think it was a drug deal gone wrong or some issues with, people that he was involved with, and they shot him while
something like an informant or snitcher of sorts, kind of figure, basically. Yes. Uranus. Opposing Chiron.
Because he wasn't involved in, he was involved with drugs and that type of world. And well, you can see that very clearly with that part of the father conjunct Chiron in the 8th house and conjuncting that Uranus. Uranus in the 2nd house can sometimes point to the native. So Sean, criminal ways of making money or out of the ordinary ways of making money, if you want to put it more politely. It not always, of course, you have to take into consideration everything else, but in this case it's quite clear. And the father as well, right? Because it's in opposition to that part of the father. Yes.
And if we use the astrological predictive technique of solar arc directions, that's why we kind of left a space and decided on a 29-degree Virgo rising, because it's around 3 degrees away from Pluto.
Yes.
And if we actually use 1 day in the heavens equals 1 human year on Earth and solar arc, that means we base it on how much the sun has traveled. We arc that forward. Solar arc Pluto conjunct ascendant when he's like age 2 plus.
Yes. And when the death happened.
And solar arc Chiron also hits that part of father, which is denoted by the letter P. Opposing that natal Uranus. You can see how Uranus, Pluto, ascendant, part of father, Chiron, it all comes in. So we are pretty confident of that.
And the other thing that caught my eye, 2 things really, which I mentioned to Donnie before, is that the father was actually shot in the car while doing some sort of deal. And, the 3rd house rules cars. Right? And he was shot in the head, which Aries rules the head. Now, if you count 8 houses from the part of the father, you arrive at the 3rd house, which is the death of the father.
In a vehicle.
Yes. So, with all of this, of course, we're never going to be 100% sure, but we can confidently say that, yes, this was the beginning of it all. I was like, oh, yeah, Virgo does, resonate when it comes to events. When it comes to personality, I mean, just by looking at that Pluto on the ascendant, that can already tell you a lot, right? But event wise, this was one of the main ones that I was like, yes, I can move forward with this.
And if you think about the energy of Virgo as a rising sign, it's the sign of imbalance or unequalness.
Yeah.
And when there's imbalance and unequalness on the relationship axis, it will actually open him up potentially in his life's journey to be both a victim and an abuser as well.
Yes.
And in which we'll get into that in a minute.
Yes. Now, just briefly touching on the mother, of course. Again, the reason why I feel like this is the right ascendant, the mother, she had a lot of jobs. So the mother worked a lot because she, of course, became a single mother and wanted the best for her kids. So this is why she did send them to, good schools, well, with good reputation, I guess. But she had to work 2 to 3 jobs in order for this to happen. And, she was a bus driver. The ruler of the mother is, in Mercury, the third house, the third house rules buses and cars and trains and everything
Transportation.
wise. Yes. She also worked at a daycare center. And the ruler of Mars, Scorpio, is in the fifth house. And these two are in trine, whole sign house trine, not by aspect, of course, but still they're seeing each other. So she had a lot of, as you can see in this chart, it fits the bus driving job and it fits the daycare job. Now, the third job wasn't disclosed, but it was said that she had more than 2. That's what it's, as far as I could see. And she was also very strict and very, not necessarily controlling, but she wanted her kids to have the right education and everything that she could provide. So she wasn't there all the time because of it, because she had to work.
And I've also picked up from an interview in which I think it was yesterday before we are taping this right now, that the mom is potentially an aunt instead.
Yes.
And if we actually switch it back to Placidus, actually the moon is falling into the Placidus 12th house, which is like a transfer of identity because it's a Pisces house. And then the sign of Virgo is actually implying like a father or mother siblings, which is an aunt or uncle, in this case, an aunt figure represented by the Virgo sign, and the moon is like a motherly figure who's an aunt, moon and Virgo in the 12th house Placidus. So this is also something like a fine note that I want to point out.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Now, when oh, sorry, I should have done this one. I'm very sorry.
It's all good, girl. Go on.
Okay, so when he was 14 years old, this is interesting. He discovered that his father was actually shot while in his car instead of dying in a car accident like his mother made him believe. And so when he was 14, he started asking his mother about it. She wouldn't tell him the truth. So he went to a library. And after a few days of research, he came up with the article of his father, passing. And this is how he found out. And what's interesting is that at 14 years old, he was once again in that third house perfected year. So, we're talking about libraries, third house, Mercury, research, Scorpio, all of these. And this is the year when he finds out. It seems throughout his life, what I could see is that so many of the big events happened when he was in that third house perfected year. Of course, activating that Sun, Mercury, but also the opposition with Saturn. You can't escape that one. That's huge. So
9th house is bibliothèque or libraries. Saturn is also something to do with the biological debt, the karma aspect of it, the lineage. Retrograde, what happened to him in the past? That's unknown. That's come to illuminate itself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so literal, guys. I
know it is very, this is why it's just, very literal. Now, when he was 12 years old, going back a little bit, he was enrolled in Mount St. Michael Academy, an all-boys Catholic school. And trigger warning for, abuse talk. Allegedly, he was sexually abused by two priests in this school. And so I went into the history of the school, and they did in fact have had a scandal of sexual abuse, ongoing sexual abuse between the 70s all the way through to the 90s. So, which fits the he went there when in the 80s, so it fits the time frame when he was there. And he has admitted this, but he has never actually gone into detail. So he's never actually spoken about this, very openly. So again, when he was 12 years old, that is a first house perfected year. So activating that Pluto conjunct the South Node, activating, of course, the moon, but of course, going back to that Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, in that third house, opposing that Saturn, which can, in this, of course, context, considering everything else, can indicate to SA by an authority figure, a spiritual, religious figure.
A priest-like figure,
ninth house. And of course, in the school, right, which is the third house, that's your school years. So again, quite literal and very, very upsetting, because it did go on for a few years. It wasn't a one-off. It was an ongoing thing that he went through. So yes. Anything to add to that?
Okay. I think people usually associate Mercury as the only ruler of Virgo. But in my, I suppose you can call it astrological career, there's a co-ruler to Virgo actually, because if you think about the sign of Virgo, we've got the lady with the Sith, right? The green. So there's actually like a co-ruler to Virgo, and that is the asteroid series. It's not plotted in here because it's her slides, but I just want to point out that, no, it's great, it's fine. Diddy's series placement is in the early degrees of Aquarius. So it's in his sixth house, forming what we call a T-square, which is a three-sided triangle as the apex, because it's at the tip of that triangle with Saturn and Mercury again. Everything just seems to always go back to that Mercury and Saturn opposition. And so this tells me that because Ceres is in the sign of trauma, Aquarius, that's the start of his trauma imprint.
Yes.
Pertaining to his thinking patterns, third house, and his belief systems, which is the ninth house.
And that series would also be squaring that Mercury in the third house.
Yes.
Bringing in the, the schooling and the authority figure abuse.
And sixth house, where the series is about unequal or imbalanced relationship, because it's a Virgo-like house.
Yeah.
So you can see how we've come to the conclusion that we are pretty confident that it's a Virgo rising.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, here we go. This one is interesting because this is a massive turning point for his career. When he was fired from Uptown Records, when he was 23 years old. At the same time, he founded and launched Bad Boy Records, right? That's what he's famous for. But the firing of Uptown Records was due to the fact that he couldn't adhere to rules and clash with authority figures, of course, with his bosses, right? Which you can very clearly see in his chart just by looking at that Sun opposite Saturn and that Pluto on the ascendant. These people are defiant. These people do not listen to authorities. And there we go. Now, when you're in when you're 23 years old, you're in a 12th house perfected year. The Sun is in that third house, right? So again, we go back to that third house. Every single event in his life goes back to that third house. And the Sun is one of the, sorry?
And if we actually use a modern rulership, anything that impacts his Mercury or Pluto impacts the other, because Mercury and Pluto are in what we call a mutual reception.
Yes.
They're in the sign of each other's rulership.
Yeah,
so,
worth mentioning. Yeah. And the Sun is also, of course, one of the career planets, right? So you have the houses of career or path, life path, but the Sun is the natural ruler of one's career. And he literally lost his job. The 12th house is the house of losses. But at the same time, when he was 24, so not just a few months after this happened, actually, he went into that first house perfected year, and this is when he launched Bad Boy Records, right? Again, massive turning point in his life, just like when he was 12 years old and the SA happened. These are massive turning points that helped build who he is, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I found that very, very interesting. And now we're going to talk about his relationship to Cassie. Now, do you want to do this in the present tense?
I think this is instrumental because it happened pretty recent.
Yes.
And this is more of I would say we will cover this more because Cassie's lawsuit against Diddy, it actually happened recently, I think end of last year.
Yes, actually, yes. So she filed last year, she filed a civil suit, and I'm just going to read this because I wrote it. Under the Adult Survivors Act, she accused Combs of rape and a decade-long pattern of abuse of all types that started when she was 19 years old. She alleges physical and sexual abuse and human trafficked, that she was human trafficked.
And this happened when Diddy is in his 7th house profected period. Yeah. So 7th house is about open enemies, but it's also about court cases.
Yes.
That's when Cassie's lawsuit got filed officially, and that's the beginning of the wobbling.
Yeah.
I suppose you can call it that, because 7th house is where the sun's rays go to die. That's where day transits into night. And you can see it's where the sun is not at its strongest because it's a Libra house, and sun, as we know, doesn't function very well in the sign of Libra or 7th house. So it's like the star power is dimming.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's court cases.
And of course, you can see that the ruler is with Venus, right, in that 2nd house. So we're talking money, because Cassie actually settled the lawsuit a few days later after filing. So of course, we don't know for sure. This is all alleged, but
for entertainment purposes only.
Of course. For a very decent, perhaps, amount of money.
I heard it's this much million. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, but even that is not
100%. But you know what? She must have had her reasons, and that's
valid. Oh no, you know what 7th house is? It's not about getting what she deserves, it's about getting even.
Getting even, yeah.
Because this will actually open up the door for other people to file theirs.
Well, this actually is what opened the door for his arrest, which happened on September 17th, which was the day of the eclipse, or a day after or before. I think it was.
So Cassie here, it serves as the door to the avalanche.
100%. She opened the door, and it's why we are where we are today. 100% is because of what she did. So yeah, definitely.
And the North Node is the magnifying glass.
Yes, definitely. 100%. Yes.
So how literal is that? Yeah,
I know. Now I do want to show you real quick.
Yes, please.
Yeah. If we go to, because then Donnie will take over. But I just wanted to show you guys really quickly that it's very interesting, the use of fixed stars in astrology. Now, fixed stars, I love to use them, but I only use them when they are very close to a personal planet or to an angle. Ideally, I only like to see moon, sun, and any of the angles. So I don't pay much attention to the other planets unless they're very close. It's got to be tight. So in this case, the tightest fixed star is Alphika. As you can see, it's right here with the sun at 11 degrees of Scorpio. This is tropical, of course, astrology, right? So it's at 11 degrees of Scorpio, Alphika. And Alphika is an interesting star because she is of the nature of Venus and Mercury. Now, we will see that Sean is a very mercurial and Martian person. Very, 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 very. And these stars confirm this. Now, in a night chart, because it has the nature of Venus, this star tends to act a little bit better, I guess. But it always depends on the aspects and the house and the closest aspect, right? So, which in this case is, of course, the most challenging aspect to that Saturn in the 9th house. So in this way, this can make the star act a little bit more in a conflictive way. So it can talk about scandals, dishonest, conflict when the person's actions are not aligned with their principles and morals. And it's about reputation issues. So it's also about wealth and fame, but it gets tainted because of something that they do that doesn't go along with the morals or the principles. It's about vanity as well, superficiality, and misusing one's talents for personal gain, taking advantage of others, which is quite literal what he's done throughout his entire career, allegedly. So so yeah, so this star conjunct his sun is the strongest one that I can see. Along with up here, we go to Betelgeuse. Now, Betelgeuse can be quite a difficult fixed star, especially in such a prominent place, which is the midheaven. And this star has the nature of Mars and Mercury. Again, the two planets that really define who he is as a person. I don't doubt that he is a very intelligent man, very creative as well. Very, he has talents to make money, 100%. But with this star up there in a night chart, this can talk about power struggles, 100%. Greed. So it's no longer ambition, it's greed. It's taking it to an extreme. It talks about impulsivity, burnout, so working to the point where you cannot handle it anymore. And so then you go to things like abuse of substances. And there could be the possibility of blackouts, like not remembering what you do, what's happened, because you're on this kind of like overdrive.
I also want to add something regarding Betelgeuse on the midheaven because besides what Cam has mentioned, Betelgeuse has also the energy of Uranus involved. So there's this kind of off the cuff, unhinged, and unpredictability.
Very.
And very wayward, as a can do something that's, a deviant of sorts. So on one hand, Betelgeuse on the midheaven can be something that's superlative and remarkable. For him, it's his professional standing and his infamy, I suppose you can call it that.
Yeah.
But it's in a sign of Gemini, which means that it's mutable.
It is mutable, yes. Two faces, right?
Yeah, the twins, the lovers.
So it is, look, at the end of the day, on an angle like that in the midheaven, it can talk about fame, it can talk about power, 100%, public image versus personal values, right? So deviating from one's values and creating a persona. Again,
so there's this kind of unpredictableness, regarding his midheaven, which is his reputation and all that. It can change.
Yeah.
And everything comes at a cost with Betelgeuse conjunct the midheaven as well. I just want to put it out there. And there's also considerable risk and or danger that's tied to Betelgeuse.
Yes. Yes. Normally you see this a lot in an angle like this. You see this a lot in criminal or people that have committed really bad crimes. You see this particular star very prominent up there. And the other one that you see next to it, Men, that is short for Menkalinen. And that star has, again, the nature of Mars and Mercury. Surprise, surprise. And it's a star, it's a very superficial star. So it can give this traits to the person. And again, vanity, superficiality, disconnection from one's emotions. So very little empathy, very little not being sensible to other people's emotions. And it can talk about, again, impulsivity, right? Mars, Mercury, restlessness. On the good side, it is a star of leadership. It is a star of intelligence and creative talents, which he is all of those things as well. Like one thing doesn't cancel the other. But on the more difficult side of it, he also displays these traits of being someone who is quick to anger, aggressive behavior, very impulsive when it comes to those actions. And because he runs to the point of burnout, he can sometimes, you know how people say, oh, I just saw red and I don't remember anything afterwards.
And with Beetlejuice beside it, he can actually snap
Snap.
very easily.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
those two stars up there in a night chart can cause a little bit of issues for sure. And on the other hand, like this Spica and Arcturus, they're conjunct Venus. And as I said, when they are conjunct a personal planet, to me, the angles and the luminaries come on top, personal planets second, right? So they're still prominent because it is quite a close conjunction. So it's worth mentioning. And Spica, Venus and Mars energy. And Spica, especially conjunct Venus, it can talk about overindulgence and giving into one's desires and vanity once again, entitlement, wealth. This is a very, very prominent star for very wealthy people, millionaires, billionaires. It's a star of success as well, of protection and talent and fertility, which is interesting because this man has gone on record and has publicly said that he wants to have as many kids as he possibly could. So that is what that combination, that's how it speaks to me at least. But again, you can see all of these traits, right? And then you can see Arcturus, which is the nature of Mars and Jupiter, and again the Martian quality of it. And it's a star of prosperity and leadership and innovation, but it can give someone because it's in a night chart, this star doesn't act very nicely. So it can give you traits of arrogance, overindulgence, impatience, aggressive behavior. They push too hard. They push people too hard and they push themselves too hard. So again, that burnout, that overwork thing. Very self-righteous, they always think they're right, very quickly to judge, but no one can judge them. And conflict in leadership, right? So control issues as well, always wanting to be in control. So these stars in this second house, you can see how they have had, I guess, a major hand in how he has created his wealth, which hasn't been through the most, I guess, allegedly, you could say, legal ways, but he has acquired the wealth, which is what the chart points to.
I'll just like to add something regarding Arcturus as well, because on one hand, it can give very strong character. As you said, on a night chart, it can give stubbornness.
Yeah.
And perhaps conflict, but it also bestows drive and intense passions. This is the one I picked up regarding.
There you go.
Arcturus.
Back that up with that Pluto on the ascendant, because these people are passionate and intense to a max. Always.
And Arcturus as well, besides Spica conjunct Venus, it can also bring a lot of benefits and favors from particularly women in his life.
Yes, protection. So it is a star of protection, meaning that you are protected or you're constantly protected by others. So this could be
particularly Venus, which is women in his life. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So with using the stars, you can already start just with the stars. You can get an idea, a very good idea of what his character is all about, what his temperament is all about, and what his life is all about. We haven't even touched on the planets and the aspects and any of that. This is literally just with the fixed star. So I think that is a very powerful tool to use and to have when you are analyzing a chart, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So now probably I can kind of take it away from you. And
I'm gonna allow you to share.
I think you already did. Okay, let me just screen share this. And this is what I've plotted, and I know it's a lot. I'm a Virgo rising, pardon me. But I've plotted a few more extra stuff on top of Cam to actually see, or should I say, let the audience know the nuance of the astrological portrait that we've kind of like put together. Yeah. And first and foremost, I have plotted in the, you can call it an object. It's called Lucifer, and it's right beside that Saturn retrograde of his. And when we talk about the object Lucifer, it usually talks about, it deals with things that boost one's ego, confidence, but it can also simultaneously break or crush it. And ninth house, like we discussed before, is to do with priests, libraries. Since it's Saturn there, it deals with like people of prominence that has authority over him. But Saturn, particularly retrograde, is also about the male lineage that he inherited, which is the father's karma. There's something regarding that story that needs to continue in his lifetime, at least in this one. But Lucifer conjunct anything, it can cause one to have the most happiness, but it can also hurt them the most at the same time. So it's a double-edged sword, really. And Diddy has got natal Saturn conjunct this object called Lucifer in the ninth house. So this can be linked to experiences with what elders like priests, ninth house, Saturn, older, that did what they did to him. And the ruler of that Saturn and Lucifer conjunct is that Venus, which is beside Jupiter. And if we actually count from the ninth house to the second house is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anything that's 6 divisional house away has got this dark house moment.
Yes.
Anything that is 6 or 8 divisional houses away, there's this kind of imbalance, or there's some kind of darkness that's involved. So he may actually bring that darkness, in which we discussed before when he's in that Catholic boarding school. He may actually bring those dynamics into his personal relationship dynamics.
Yes.
Because we're talking about Venus here, that's ruling everything in Taurus.
And you know
While
what? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to add, just for the people watching, I know that Venus in Libra conjunct Jupiter can look beautiful and fabulous, especially in the second house, right? It's delicious. I know that. But as I always say, and I'm sure you've heard this before, Venus is so sweet and Jupiter expands everything. But if you give too much sugar to a diabetic, you will kill them. This is about overindulgence in the
and
of this.
Not to mention that Venus and Jupiter squares Mars exalted.
100%.
Anything that's exalted means you're dealt with a very, very strong hand at birth. But does it mean that you will go even higher than exaltation? Or does it go down? I'll let the audience think about
it. You can write it in the comment.
I would rather have a planet in fall or detriment because there's nowhere to go but up.
But up, yeah.
If it's exaltation, you're already exalted. So where can it go?
Just down.
There you go.
100%.
And and because Venus and Jupiter squares Mars, and Mars rules everything over Scorpio, in which that Mercury is opposing Saturn and Lucifer again in Taurus in the ninth house. So whatever that he experienced in the religious school, third and ninth house opposition, during the earlier years, he will bring those trauma imprints into his relational or relationship dynamics later on, how he deals with people. Yeah. And now let us go to the other side of this opposition, which is that Mercury. Let's start with the object beside Mercury, which is Ixion. So Ixion is actually a dwarf planet, and it really talks about one's conflict of self. And Ixion also is talking about the archetype of Pluto's lawless brother. Lawless. So it's like, cowboy town, basically. Yes. And just a little nugget regarding Ixion. Ixion is actually a dwarf planet located in the Kuiper belt, just beyond Neptune. And so it's in between. Its orbit is between Neptune and Pluto. So it's got both of these planets' energies because of the orbit. And since we're talking about Neptune and Pluto, it's about that collective influence over people because it's the furthest away from the sun, right? And you can see how his case or news about him, third house, news about him, has reverberated so much and people are just glued in to the news cycle because of him. So Ixion, if we talk about keywords or key phrases, is the father of the centaurs. Centaurs also include Chiron.
Oh, yes.
You can think about third and eighth house connection there. And Ixion is the father of the centaurs, which includes Chiron, amongst other stuff. If we talk about the negative aspects of Ixion, which is right beside his Mercury, it can really emphasize the lustiness, the inconsiderate aspect of himself. He's inclined to repeat errors, and he may actually learn nothing from his past experience. This is what Ixion is about. When it's conjunct Mercury, means that his mind, his mental plane just doesn't get it, and he may be predisposed to just carry on the same thing. If you think about it, Ixion conjunct Mercury opposing Saturn retrograde. Saturn is the karma that he will reap eventually. If he continues along the same path, the payback is very much financial. And with what's going on now, with all the court cases that's being thrown around, this may actually very quickly drain his income. Because what is the planet that's ruling everything in Taurus? That Venus. And this is conjunct the seventh house ruler. Court cases drain his income. Payouts,
definitely.
But on a more neutral kind of meaning, Ixion conjunct Mercury means that he's always trying to follow his own sense of bliss. Whatever that bliss is about. This may be, some kind of addiction I have seen, because when I see like Ixion conjuncting like a personal planet like Mercury, there can be this overindulgence in substances, as in substance abuse, to keep him in that Neptunian route. Because of the orbit of Ixion that's just right outside of Neptune. So it's that bliss, that ecstasy.
Yeah.
That's involved.
You said that Ixion was of the nature of Pluto and Neptune?
Yeah, that's how I associate it with.
Yeah. Because conjunct Mercury, he would be a very alluring speaker. Or
charming.
He would be a great liar too. Very good liar. Those people that don't even blink. So, it's,
And Diddy has got natal Mercury conjunct Ixion, opposing Lucifer and Saturn. And Saturn is about repeating. It can be something that's ritualistic as well, something that you repeat, something that's ceremonial in nature is Saturn. Conjunct Lucifer.
Do we have
so how do I put this? Okay, let me go even further. Natal Saturn also rules over the exalted Capricorn at 29 degrees, which is a critical degree. When we talk about someone's core identity, sexual identity that is, we usually talk about the 8th house, in which Mars actually rules. When we talk about sexual expression of that core sexual identity is the 5th house, because it's 10 divisional houses away from the 8th. This is how you express yourself. His natal 8th house has got Chiron, which means that there's some woundedness or pain surrounding his core sexual identity. In the sign of Aries, self, the sign of self, ruled by that Mars at 29 degrees of Capricorn exalted, 29, a pretty tough degree in the fifth house of expression of that core sexual identity.
Mm-hmm.
Not forgetting that Chiron in his eighth house is opposing Uranus, the sign of queerness.
Yeah. Yes.
So there's already this kind of deviancy and queerness that I can see from his chart. And Uranus and Chiron along the second and eighth house, doesn't it kind of equate to the term freak-offs?
Yeah.
Uranus is freak offs, you know. And second house is his body.
Yeah.
Eighth house is other people's body. The second from the seven is the other person's body. So it's like you can see there's this kind of sexual connotation along the second and eighth house axis that kind of bring some kind of bliss to him that's tied up in this Luciferian ceremonial magic, I would even call it. Where do I get the ceremonial magic that also includes perhaps the engagement of people in the sex industry as workers? Is that Saturn and Lucifer and that Mercury Ixion forming trines and sextiles to that moon.
Mm-hmm.
We use whole sign house system here, but if we actually revert it back to Placidus, this is actually in the 12th house of the bedroom, anything that's hidden from view, and also, more importantly, bed pleasures is the 12th house.
Yes.
And the moon rules the 11th whole sign house of happy hour buddies or group activities with employees or hired help, Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
If I actually put all these things together, I'm going to say it, okay? Allegedly for entertainment purposes only, there's already a curiosity to indulge in satanic ritualistic orgies. This comes to mind.
And it's quite literal, really.
It's quite literal if I put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And it's about control. Mars in Capricorn, control, a Saturn root sign. Yeah. So I think I want to pose the question here. Was the narcissist or psychopath that's shown in this chart born or nurtured? Is he actually a product of his previous traumas?
Or was it born this way?
Or was it born this way? Because this brings me back to the co-ruler of his supposedly ascendant, which is Virgo. That is Ceres here.
Yeah.
Mercury and Ceres co-rule the sign of Virgo. And Ceres is in a sign of Aquarius, which is the sign of trauma. Because the ruler of Aquarius is that Uranus, that it goes back to the opposition to Chiron in his eighth house of core sexual identity.
Mm-hmm.
Or the control of another person's resources and body. Put it this way.
Yeah.
It's a nature versus nurture argument. I'll leave it to the audience for that. But
yes,
whatever that me and Cam have unveiled thus far, we have our own little conclusion.
Yeah. Definitely, yes. And you know what's interesting as well, and I know that this is not as relevant because of the planet involved, but Neptune here at 27 degrees is actually in a very close opposition to Algol. And of course, in trine to that Pluto, right? Or in that ascendant. So I know that it's not exact in degrees, but it's close. So the influence can still be there. It might not be extremely prominent, but Algol, amongst other things, it is a star of witchcraft. It is a star that rules the Pleiades. Like the Pleiades do talk about witches. They talk about rituals. They talk about all of this, more.
And also exalted Mars is trining Algol as well.
As well.
Yeah.
So it is
and Mars rules his eighth house of occult, metaphysical.
Yes. And this star, it's part of the Pleiades and it does not have a good reputation and there's a reason for it, you know. It's about losing your head over something that has more of an obscure, yeah. So, you know, you can really see a lot of different things that pinpoint to the same thing, really.
Yeah, and the co-ruler of his Virgo rising, that series, is in T square to his Saturn and Mercury, and also that Lucifer and Ixion.
Yeah.
And that series, the co-ruler of his ascendant and also Virgo placements, is pretty close to conjunct Mars at 29 degrees, which is a very reactionary kind of placement if I think about it. Yeah. Tendency to fight, flight,
Very
freeze, or
defiant.
fawn.
Yes.
Yes. And also defiant as well.
Very.
And how do I put this? It's like but I do see that because the exalted Mars is squaring Venus and Jupiter, his response is like fawning. How he uses his Mars, as he also seeks pleasure, which is Venus conjunct Jupiter, a very like indulgent kind of combination as his strategy to cope. And with that Venus and Jupiter, I would say by degree and sign squaring the exalted Mars, here we can see kind of like a hedonistic, controlling abuser kind of archetype.
Definitely. Every time you see Mars and Venus in a square in a natal chart, it can talk about issues surrounding, you know, sex, surrounding infidelity, betrayals in love, secrets, and then you add Jupiter to the mix right there, who is very literally expanding all of this. So, and of course you have to add the other two stars that were present. And yeah, so it all, like I said, it all roads lead to Rome here, quite literally.
Yes. And I do see like because if I actually consider that Mars conjunct series, both squaring Jupiter and Venus, is a hedonistic, controlling abuser kind of archetype who needs absolute, even spying on the other 24/7. There's actually some clips that suggest so. He keeps people on surveillance.
Yeah.
It's also that distrust as well of people snitching on him. But there's also one big thing with this Mars series squaring Venus and Jupiter is that consent from another, because it's Libra squaring a planet in Capricorn, is actually optional. For those whom he deems as beneath him or below him, which is that series in the sixth house of imbalance and unequal relationships.
Yeah.
Sixth house is also like hired help, servants, bodyguards is also sixth house.
Yeah, anyone that serves you, right, throughout, like it could be someone that works for you in any way.
Capacity.
Yeah, capacity.
Basically, sixth house in traditional meaning is about slavery.
Slavery, yeah.
Yeah, so employees is also sixth house as well. Yeah. So another noteworthy placement that I want to mention here that I've picked out is this one called Nessus. It's also one of the centaurs. Why do I want to single out this Nessus placement is that it can really help us to check on patterns or cycles of abuse. And as a general kind of, I suppose you can call it introductory knowledge, when someone actually experience significant abuse in their lives, they can respond in a few different ways. One of them is that they surround themselves with individuals who treat them like their abuser did. Another possibility for someone who suffered cycles of abuse is that they treat themselves like the abuser treated them. That means they themselves from the victim becomes the abuser subsequently. Or another way that they can cope with this is that they treat others like their abuser treated them. So you can see how this cycle just is a never-ending story.
Yes.
And if we talk about Nessus, the key phrases that I've picked out is that it's about sexual or emotional abuse. There's a great power or need for responsibility, integrity on the flip side, or taking accountability for yourself. Nessus is also the asteroid or object that talks about obsession. Despite yourself having an awareness of the risk that's involved or the danger that's involved. It's in the very youthful sign of Gemini. It's a talker sign. And the ruler, we are back with that Mercury ruling everything in Gemini, conjunct Ixion.
Yeah. It goes back to that.
So it's like how, and by the way, I'm going to go even one step further. Anything that's youth or child or children related deals with the sign of Gemini. And allegedly, for entertainment purposes only, kids are actually involved in this whole scheme of things that I don't think is talked about enough.
Yes.
That we need to address.
There, yes. 100%.
So, although, how do I put this? With what I talked about thus far with his pattern of abuse, in which he's the victim, relating to his past woundings, and he's bringing that archetype into his future relational dynamics, be it from this or past lifetimes, because Saturn is retrograde. So this can also tie to past lifetimes of abuse as well that he's brought forward in this lifetime to experience it all over again retrograde. With his natal Nessus in the sign of Gemini, unfortunately, allegedly, of course, I would just want to mention that Nessus in the sign of Gemini is also about transportation, because it's a transportation sign. Gemini is also the sign of kids, someone very youthful, or someone who's actually a kid.
Yeah. You can put that one.
Yeah. So I'm talking about trafficking of minors in the whole scheme of things.
Yeah.
In order to have some kind of, you can call it carnal pleasures, material gains, or ritualistic satanic gratifications, or even sacrifice. Because anything that's in Gemini, via a common ruler, which is Mercury, also connects to Virgo.
Yeah.
So this is, I know, very uncomfortable, but I just need to lay out there because, we spill the tea over here on this channel.
Of course, it has to be, said.
So nature or nurture, I'll leave it to you guys to decide.
Yes,
all right?
let us know
because I think I've seen enough regarding what I need to see.
Yeah, definitely.
So how about, since we covered his past, why not we move into the present and into the future?
Of course.
Yeah.
Are you gonna put up the chart?
Shall we?
Yep. Do you want me to do it or?
Cool. Yeah, you first.
Up to you.
Yeah, you first.
I'll just put his chart with the transits.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Let me sorry, I just did it without sharing. There we go. Sorry, I've left the stars. I'm so sorry if that's confusing. Should I get rid of them?
No, I think it's fine though. Like, unless you want to go back to emphasizing the fixed stars, but
yeah, no, I don't want it to be too confusing for people. That's all.
Or just look at the symbols or the guilds. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you know what I found very interesting, just very basic and very interesting, is that the eclipse that happened back on the 17th of September, which was the day when he was arrested, the eclipse was right here, 26 of Pisces, directly opposing, well, if he is a Virgo ascendant, he's Pluto. And Pluto is the co-ruler of his third house. So once again, we go back there, right? So it's, I think that I know that is very basic, but it's just once again how literal sometimes astrology can be. And another, I guess, way of maybe confirming that he may just as well be a Virgo ascendant, and this cycle of eclipses will start affecting him deeply. He has already a trial date you mentioned to me before. When was it?
5th of May next year.
So
552025. Yeah.
5th of May, and the last eclipse in Aries is going to be in April or late March. Is that right?
You mean coming up in 2025?
Yeah.
It's both happening in March, the lunar and solar one.
Yeah, and the Aries one, I think, is the end of March, like
End
very
of March, 29th. Yeah.
which will be in that 8th house, right? So remember, he's been having eclipses in this axis. So activating that Jupiter, that Venus, Uranus, the fixed stars, and his Chiron. And then he began his Pisces-Virgo axis by being arrested. So I just find that extremely, telling. And how old is he? 54 years old, is that right?
He's chronologically 54.
54.
7th house perfected year since last November 4th. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So he, again, legal issues. The 7th house, I know people tend to romanticize this house because it's the house of marriage and love. It's not the house of love. It's the house of contracts and clients and business partners and legal
open enemies. Yeah.
And the reason why it's associated with marriage is because marriage is a literal contract. That's the reason why. It has nothing to do with love. So when you look at the 7th house from this point of view, you can very much see why this has happened to him while on a 7th house perfected year. So, and we also have Saturn traveling through the 7th house, which eventually will once again conjunct that North Node. And that can be quite telling as well when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, everything just kind of unfolded after he experienced his birthday last year, isn't it?
Yeah. And of course, right now, look at that. You have Pluto, as you said to me before we started, Pluto at 29 degrees, about to go into that 0 degrees of Aquarius, but we're still 4 weeks away, or 5 weeks away. But right now is on top of that Mars. And Mars rules the 3rd house. Pluto co-rules the 3rd house. So we go back to that, the core of who he is and what he's done. And you know what I mean? So it's all coming to light. Pluto comes from the 1st house, So, and it is conjunct that South Node. And that normally when you see that in a chart, it can tell about a very karmic life or events in the life of the native. So it is time to pay up, pretty much.
Yeah, and the co-ruler of his Virgo placements, including the supposedly ascendant, is that series, which is in the early degrees of
it's around
Aquarius. And Pluto will be hitting that 3rd degree of Aquarius point together with Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus, expecting that 3-degree Aquarius point.
Oh my God. When will that be?
Middle of the year, next year, for a good few months.
Yeah.
So 2025, around like April onwards.
Yeah. March 2025, Pluto will be at 3 degrees of Aquarius. That's where his series is.
Yeah. And then you've got Neptune and Saturn coming up as well.
Neptune at 29 degrees.
Going into early Aries, like maybe the 2nd degree of Aries.
Yeah.
And then Uranus will join that at 1 degree of Gemini.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So everything is like that series, which is the co-ruler of everything in Virgo, which is him.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of,
I find it interesting when that, because this is going to be around the same date when Saturn will hit, that North Node. So everything will be very, close in dates. It's not going to be exact, of course, but this is something is coming for him. And
Yeah.
I think that when Neptune and Saturn both go into Aries,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna
And
be,
then retrograde back. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's when things really, and we can, maybe we shouldn't speculate yet, but there could be some.
I mean, if we actually can fine-tune the ascendant through our own little reverse
Yes.
engineering techniques, the vertex, which is the second
Oh yes.
descendant in anyone's chart, I have around 27 to 28 degrees of Pisces, his vertex in his seventh house.
So it would be here around that north.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that will be coming for him in like the Q2, Q3, up to Q2 and Q3 predominantly next year.
Yeah.
Because Neptune and Saturn will go back
Yes.
into late Pisces. And that's when you revisit
Yeah.
some stuff. So is it over? It's just the beginning,
Yes.
I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So from now till his birthday on 4th of November, 2024, he's still running a seven house profected year.
Mhm.
So in this house, we've got a probable vertex at 27 Pisces together with the North Node in that sign. So there's a lot of new stuff that he will experience externally, vertex, that's perhaps karmic in nature because vertex has that karmic component to it. And that kind of sense of destiny, he need to go through this.
Yeah, definitely.
The vertex. And just to bring it slightly backward, on the day when his homes were raided, it was close to the,
When was
and
that?
I think it was the fifth day of Aries this year.
Oh, this year. Okay. So
Fifth day of Aries. So
around
Sun and Moon is around fifth degree of Libra.
uh,
Oh, sorry, the Moon is at fifth degree of Libra. The Sun is at fifth degree of Aries. Yes.
yeah, okay. Around there. No.
Yeah. And then if you look at where Neptune is at 28 of Pisces, is still conjunct natal vertex.
Yeah.
And the transit North Node is in its eighth house, whole sign house.
Back then, yes.
In the middle of the sign, tightly sextile his natal Nessus in the middle of Gemini in his 10th house.
Yeah.
Anything that's 8th house and 10th house joining, this time via a sextile, whatever's in the dark, 8th house comes into light, 10th house.
Definitely.
And look where Mercury is.
Oh, right there. Retrograde.
Conjunct the North Node.
Yes. Yeah, and it's interesting because this year he goes into that eighth house perfected year. And once again, activating the third house and the fifth house. Why? Because Mars rules the eighth, the third, and is in the fifth, right? So these are the three houses that will be fully activated throughout the next, well, from November this year until his next birthday, which is when his trial will be. He will be in an eighth house perfected year when he goes on his trial. And that can already kind of tell you a little bit about perhaps what's going to happen. Just that.
More news will come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, more revelations on news,
Definitely. So, and the only thing that I worry about is that when that Neptune goes into that eighth house, Neptune talks about it's the disappearing act, right?
We can talk about secret films.
Yes, but physically speaking, do you know what I mean?
Like Risk, for example, like poof, pull a Houdini. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which wouldn't be surprising, really. Wow. Yeah.
But now knowing that his bail has been denied not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Yeah, I didn't know about the third time. Yeah.
It just happened in the last 48 hours, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, as you guys can see, it's still ongoing. There's still so
It's
much.
still unfolding. Yeah.
Yes, there's so much to come to light as well. I think we're gonna keep being surprised by, maybe not surprised, but shocked by what comes out, because there's still so much that will come out to light, and you can see that by this chart.
Yeah. And if you think about this particular eclipse at around like 5 degrees of Libra, it's actually highlighting his Chiron and Uranus opposition.
Mm.
And then later on, we've got not one lunar eclipse, but two lunar eclipses is gonna
It's all lunar
respectively.
eclipses. It's pretty much all lunar eclipses from now on. Well, except for, but
So the
yeah,
one in September when he got arrested, the lunar eclipse is opposing his Pluto.
exactly.
And next March, middle of March, there's gonna be one opposing his Pluto.
Um, Middle of March 2025, right? Yes.
About 14 to 15 of March. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be right here. Maybe there.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
So that's on the 14th of March. We're going to have a lunar eclipse in a south node as well, lunar eclipse in Virgo, conjuncting once again his Pluto.
So since it's a South Node eclipse, it's about revisiting the past or excavating something from the past. So is it done? Far from done, actually. So there's even more within the past. This can be the encrypted, compromising data. I don't know. I think I heard it's like 90 terabytes.
Whoa. I,
90 or 900. I'm not sure. I think it's 90. If I've heard it properly, don't quote me. But it's in terabyte. The number is staggering until like wow. Okay.
yeah.
So and there's so many devices, hundreds of devices that seized from like computers, hard drives, and also phones.
Yeah. I know. It's yeah. And then Jupiter, of course, is going to come out of that Gemini and it's going to go into Cancer, which means it'll be squaring his own Jupiter and Venus, and it will oppose that Mars. So, yeah.
Because if we just track the lunar eclipses, first of all, it activated his Chiron and Uranus opposition, and then followed by Pluto, the lunar eclipses.
Yes.
What this tells me regarding the lunar eclipse activations to his Uranus, Chiron opposition, then Pluto in his allegedly first house or supposedly first house is that it's about coming to light because, lunar eclipses bring everything to light. And if he's been living his life acquiring personal power and control over others in abusive ways for selfish reasons, everything will come to light.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does conduct his life like what I just mentioned, I'll leave the audience to decide whether he is indeed, after all the news that's been coming out regarding him. Situations will be created because lunar eclipses are sun and moon in opposition, is a full moon on steroids. Situations or scenarios will be created for his eventual fall from grace or fame in order to cause deep, permanent, and often transformational reversals to occur in his life.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. I think that the beginning of next year, so beginning, I'm like March.
Yeah.
So March, April, and May, it seems very relevant for him. Of course, his trial, you said it was on the 5th. No, yeah, the 5th of May.
5th of May, yeah, 5th of May.
On the 14th of May, so not that, so a couple of days later, Saturn will exactly be opposing that supposed ascendant. And of course, would have previously opposed that Pluto. So I think this is when it's going to get like,
And 5th of May 2025 is also the day of the Met Gala in New York City.
Yeah, you did mention that. I forgot about that. Yes.
So there's reasons why he picked that date. Maybe is to to bring someone else down.
maybe.
Because you know when people walk the Met Gala, they're interviewed, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be really an awkward one in terms of press, put it that way.
Yeah.
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 And
It's
the
interesting.
and the South Node will conjunct his Pluto by
Yeah.
transits. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be definitely be interesting. Worth, keeping your eyes on this case, because it's not so much about it's not about being morbid, and talking about this subject. It's
Right.
actually it's very interesting. I feel like all the victims and all the people involved, they deserve to be heard, to be taken into consideration. And I feel like this is something that we cannot forget, that we can't just put aside as in another like Hollywood scandal. This is not a Hollywood scandal.
Put it this way, he's not a Sputnik,
But
like a one-off of this.
it goes
I,
beyond that. This is
it
about,
goes way before this, before social media. Just
yeah,
that we now have social media,
yeah. So I think it's
and
an important topic to touch, even though it can be hard to listen, hard to talk about. It's heavy.
I think my
Say it.
question for you, Cam, is that do you think that knowing his chart now in depth, do you think he's being chosen for the right job?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
My answer is yes as well. And that's due to three individuals. I won't name their names because of, whatever, but their initials, their first name, it lines up to the initials TLC. I'll let you figure out who those are.
They're
And I think he's been trained very well. What?
in the music industry.
Yes, the music industry, the higher ups,
Higher
and their
ups.
first name initials line up as T, L, and C.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting coming up for his upcoming solar return as well is a pretty close opposition between Mars and Pluto.
Sorry.
It's fun.
Get rid of
I
that.
think it's almost to the minute, if I recall,
His solar return for
this year. Yeah, yeah.
where is he?
Harlem, New York, maybe like home turf. Yeah.
Harlem. Yep, that one.
Because he's in jail in New York State anyway. So
Okay. So is it this one that you were looking at? Capricorn ascendant?
oh yeah, you can see the opposition between Mars and Pluto.
Yes. Let me just get rid of these stars. There we go. Sorry, that's a little bit more clear. Yes, so if we put them together, there we go. So that fifth house is going to be very active. Mars, Pluto, exactly conjunct in that fifth house. And look at that Mars as well. Oof.
And part of fortune give and take 1 degree, it will be conjunct his natal ascendant and Virgo placement co-ruler series.
Mm-hmm.
So part of fortune is highlighting his natal T square, third, ninth house, and sixth house.
Look at that. So he goes from the conjunction between Jupiter and Venus to the opposition between Jupiter and Venus.
So I think my question to you, because opposition, between Venus and Jupiter, you reckon some stars will fall because of
Well, oppositions always talk about a third person or more people. There's definitely that. You can definitely say that, especially in that axis, in the natal 10th house, right? It's it's the sixth house from the fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So this can be his, co-workers,
snitching.
yeah, people that he collaborates with. Just put it that way, I guess.
And the North Node by transit in the solar return chart is approaching to conjunct. Now is conjuncting is part of Father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Opposing Uranus, so the snitching.
Yeah, the part of Father is here. Yeah.
and then it's gonna approach to activate his Chiron.
Mm-hmm.
So you reckon he won't be going down alone? He'll try to like drag other people with him with
I
this
think
solar
he
return
will.
that you
I
can see.
think he will, but I think that he will, when these two planets eventually go into Aries, they could something might happen.
The actual conjunction between Saturn and Neptune will occur February of 2026.
Mm, okay, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's still relatively a long time away, but it's worth keeping your eye on that because in that eighth house, conjuncting that Chiron, activating that. Yeah,
You
definitely.
reckon he'll be Epstein
Yeah,
2.0?
that's what I'm trying. I don't know how to say it nicely, but yes,
Well, there's no way to say it nicely.
follow
I
up.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, there's a window for that, but do I have extra significators that indicate he'll be Epstein 2.0? I
Mhm.
actually don't think so because of that opposition of Venus and Jupiter.
Mm.
There's something that opposition will blast benefic rays to him that he
But
may
not,
actually.
yeah, but this is because that won't happen this year for him. It'll happen the next solar return for him because this happens in 2026, right?
This current solar return, no, this is the upcoming one happening next month onwards.
But this one goes until 2025.
November, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then that one is the one that will show Neptune in Aries.
Fully with Saturn.
Fully.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that one is the one that I feel like there could be, but I guess we're going way ahead, but that's the
But
one.
by then, he'll be hitting his ninth house perfected periods.
Which is legal matters, one of the themes,
Saturn will be activated,
activating the opposition, 100%. Yeah. Activating
and
house, Mars, and the sixth house. Again, legal.
right. So there's even more news
Yes.
pertaining to that. But um, I have like churned out his solar return. I have seen something like 4 years from now or 5 years from now. There's this kind of um like a disappearance of his legacy that's coming up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I find it interesting. But there's like further down the road, we don't even know whether like how long he will be in there.
Yeah.
But I just know that there will be much, much more negotiations because opposition is about negotiations. Yeah.
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 Okay. So, yeah, not yet.
Nine house perfected period as of 3rd November 2025 for 1 year. And his ascendant in his solar return is also falling in Taurus. Yeah.
And he's got
And
his return.
and he just had his Venus return.
Oh, well, this is, I know this is way ahead. Sorry, guys. But yeah, it's just, it's very interesting. I think that we still have so much to see.
I
Um,
think we still got a lot more to uncover. I don't see that just because next year VR perfection is kind of like a more danger filled, I suppose,
yeah.
period for him. But I don't see the culmination of indicators that may cause him to be Epstein 2.0. Yeah,
Hmm.
not quite yet.
Maybe, I don't know. We will have to wait. That eighth house. Yeah. It's just, again, we go back to that same thing, third, fifth, ninth, all of the same house activated. So I think
Yeah.
that it's going to be a huge year for him. That doesn't mean good or bad. It just means it's going to be
I mean,
huge.
fifth house in the mundane is about the entertainment industry.
Mm,
And ninth house is like small time media content creator versus mainstream media.
yeah. I just
So
feel
there
like
can
it's,
be,
like the Pluto is squaring his Venus. So this is all forming a T square here, you see?
yeah.
So that's why I think all of this. to his planets here.
Mm.
You see, and then you add Chiron in transit.
But you do know that he's got his Venus Jupiter in very good dignity because his Venus
100%.
is very strong.
100.
So
Yes.
Venus and Jupiter can be a plea deal or bargain.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like. It's one of the things that I thought is that, and that's why I was trying to avoid saying it. But I mean, is there a chance that he could get away with this?
Lesson, yes. Altogether, don't think so.
You
Because it's just because he's midhaven with all the fixed stars that you just mentioned, Mankalinan and also
know,
Betelgeuse, and his Nessus is also there in the middle of Gemini.
yeah, they point to, of course, yeah, a
No, I
full
think because
kind of
through
thing.
interviews, Gemini, he run his mouth too loosely.
Mm.
He's disclosed too much about himself. Too incriminating not to have something.
Eh,
You know what I mean?
I know.
So, but I just want to lay it out here that he is just a small part of the puzzle of a much bigger thing, much bigger. I just want to mention this.
Yeah.
And if I were to mention every tentacle that this can go into, this can be of a national security level kind of.
100%. It's a pyramid, and he's down here.
He's down here. He's one of the lower,
Lower.
much lower tier ones. Yeah. And then the music industry, the higher execs are one tier higher, and then you've got like all sorts of people really from like banks, corporations,
Yeah.
CEOs,
Politicians.
Silicon Valley.
Mm.
The list goes on and on and on. This can be of a much larger thing that's international in nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, international in nature. So I just want to put it out there that don't think that he's just a Sputnik, that he's just a one-off. He's not.
Mhm.
He's not. I think we need to really drive home that point.
Yes.
And it's about keeping people in check and to drive certain agendas into the forefront, into our faces. We are just like the product, the recipient of things.
Yeah.
So this makes me kind of think very differently of what I consume. So that I think this is even more important. So my energy doesn't get unnecessarily or unconsciously harvested.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think this is very important. I've been listening to a lot of solfeggio frequencies just to tune my chakras properly.
Like research on this, I got headaches and I just felt drained. And I know people may think that it's a bit crazy and woo-woo and out there, but it actually does drain you. These topics, they're so heavy. And
yeah, and it's probably like a very nice distraction from bigger issues at hand happening right now in parallel that people need to look at. So it's always about look over here, look over there, right? So
yeah, definitely.
yeah. So conserve your energy. If you're feeling some sort of way, find ways to make sure that your energy is not unnecessarily harvested by whatever's presented to you for free. Because do remember, whatever's that's free out there, you're the product that they want to harvest in some way, shape, or form, being energetically or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's what we have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. I really enjoy, even though it was very heavy, I enjoyed doing this with Donnie and researching this. Very interesting. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this. And I hope you guys, enjoyed it just as much. Please leave us your opinions. And the question that Donnie asked, nurture versus nature, which one is it for him? It's very interesting. And thank you so much. Thank you for staying this long. If you have, thank you very much. We appreciate you. And hopefully we can do this again,
Oh yeah. I mean, let us know whether you want us to cover Bieber's chart, because there is a paradox in his chart that I want to cover.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting too. Yeah. Different approach as well.
Different approach, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so till next time.
Thank you guys. Have a lovely
Bye.
Bye.